everyone, and welcome to What's New in AgilePoint version 8. Version 8 is truly a landmark release for us here at AgilePoint, and we couldn't be more proud to share it with you today. It represents AgilePoint's continued commitment to providing the industry's most comprehensive, easy to use, and extensible general-purpose application platform. Now, while there's certainly lots to discuss in version 8, this video will focus on a few of the highlights. So if you'd like to learn more on any specific feature, there is a wealth of documentation and training content ready to explore. Okay, so that brings us to the main topic of conversation today. What exactly is new in AgilePoint version 8? Well, there are three major categories of enhancements that we'll focus on for today. The first of which is something you'll notice immediately, and that is that we've enhanced the entire user experience across the platform. More than 5,000 screens and interfaces have been updated with a modern look and feel, new icons, and even a new, beautiful base forms theme. We've also improved how you work with tasks, including a Kanban style drag and drop interface. Next, we'll show you how we've made AgilePoint even easier to use, and how the version 8 release can enable your citizen developers to contribute even more to the solving of their own business challenges, under the guardrails that you've specified. Here you're going to see usability enhancements in how applications are designed, how data models are created, and unlocking an entirely new category in application development in AgilePoint, and those are spreadsheet-based applications. And then of course, any new release of AgilePoint is not complete without entirely new functionality. Your AgilePoint deployment just keeps becoming more valuable with the addition of Analytics Center, where non-technical users can easily create their own reports and advanced dashboards. And lastly, new integrations to ensure that AgilePoint fits seamlessly into your technology landscape. Okay, so that brings us to the first topic of today's conversation. And again, something you're going to notice throughout the entirety of the platform, and that is a much more modern, crisp user interface. Now here you're going to see a few quick examples. Now, as we mentioned a moment ago, as far as the form designer is concerned, a new, beautiful base forms theme, as well as entirely redesigned user interface controls. But don't worry, you'll still build your forms the exact same way. They've just gotten a bit of a facelift. You're going to see something very similar here within the process designer. Again, the same functionality exists with new pieces added, but the major difference here being a redesigned user interface. And lastly, we'll spend some time here, and that is within the Work Center. All right, so not only here will you see an improvement in UI, but we've also improved the way that you work with and manage all of your tasks. Okay, so the next topic I'd like to talk about today starts with the scope of coverage of the AgilePoint platform. Now what you're seeing at the top here, sort of the various buckets or categories of enterprise applications, right? What comprises an enterprise's average application portfolio? So as many of you are aware, AgilePoint has really excelled over the years in the area of process-centric applications, from high-end BPM functionality to departmental or work group related processes. Now with version 7 and version 6, we've continued to move towards the left here and tackling the data-centric sorts of use cases. This is where AgilePoint's form-based applications come into the picture, right? Those are user interface forms that do not have a process around them. The ability to create database-centric applications, as well as mobile apps. Now with version 8, we've extended that further to the left here to include a category of personal productivity sorts of applications. By that I mean spreadsheet apps. Now you'll see a few examples of this here during the demo, but in short, as a citizen developer, I can easily create a data model for my application based on an Excel spreadsheet. Or for those customers who have heavily invested in Excel macros over the years, I can also use a sheet as both a primary data source for my business application to both read from and write to an Excel spreadsheet. So the way that this would work here is we have our Excel sheet. We can upload that to AgilePoint, and the end result being a much more governed, enterprise-grade application. Right? So really taking the concept of a personal productivity sort of application and the ability to easily build an application around that Excel sheet. Okay, so next we have the new analytics module. Analytics was really an area of consistent customer feedback over the years, and we've really taken that to heart here in our new release. So we're going to walk through a few more examples during the demo, but just to give you an idea of the types of dashboards, composite sort of mashup reports, right, and of course analytics that can be easily created by a non-technical user. And then lastly, as we mentioned, any new release of AgilePoint would not be complete without a host of new integrations. So in version 8, you're going to see process activities for Power Automate, as well as an AgilePoint application for AppSource. And this is really crucial, right, because it enables that bi-directional sort of communication, right, where AgilePoint can reach out to Power Automate, and then of course, vice versa. Another new addition is that of Ethereum blockchain, an area that we've seen lots of interest in our FinServe customers, specifically for its ability to create smart contracts. Now, if you've seen our product architect Nishant's blog, he has a great example of how AgilePoint can interact with, deploy, execute these various sorts of Ethereum-based smart contracts. New integrations for ServiceNow, for Jira, and then of course, Microsoft's answer for Data Entity, which is their Dataverse product. So with that being said, let's jump into AgilePoint and we'll give you a look around. Okay, so as you can see here, we have entirely redesigned the AgilePoint homepage. And keep in mind, you can always replace the out-of-the-box look and feel with your own, complete with pages and menus via AgilePoint's Page Builder. Okay, so that brings us to the Work Center. You'll notice a slightly different look and feel here in my primary end user area. I will point out the ability to go back to the classic experience. We appreciate that the new interface may take some training or at the very least communication with your end users. So for the next few months, we are opening up the ability to go back to the classic experience. But keep in mind, after the next few months, the modern experience will be the only path forward. So with that being said, just as I saw in version 7, I have a quick overview of my tasks, including by status, but we've also added a number of new components. Right here we're seeing a task summary view showing me tasks that are due in an hour, a day, or a week, and the ability to drill into those items. We've also added a task planner here, as you can see. Now what this does is it reminds me of certain items that I need to attend to in a given day. This could be an AgilePoint application, for instance, launching a new request. This could be working on a particular task, as an example. Or simply leaving a note for myself for something I must attend to on a given day. Now beyond the task planner here, you'll notice we've also added a watch list. This is going to be very handy for managers, for supervisors, to be able to follow along with a process that they may not be a direct participant in. Whether it's a VIP customer or a high-valued process, I can simply pin that here to my home screen and follow along as the application executes. So as you're seeing here, I have a button to pull up the process monitor, and also the ability to view the report view, right? In other words, view all of the data that's been captured by a particular form at a given stage in the process. Now down below, you'll see I have a frequently used applications section, recent tasks, as well as recent requests. Now here, again, you'll see the ability to view the process monitor, to see all of the data, and also a new addition, the ability to clone this request. By that I mean pre-fill a new request with the details of one submitted previously. Okay, so now that we've covered off the additions to the overview page, let's click into our task list. Now one of the first things that you'll notice here is that we've changed the style of managing tasks. And again, we can always go back to the classic experience. But as you can see here, we've implemented a Kanban style card layout. And on the right hand side, you're going to see group tasks, or tasks that are in the queue. So in my case, I have some extra cycles today to work on this particular request. So I'm just going to grab it and drag it into my bucket. You'll see here it is dropped out of the queue and is now assigned to me. Now I have a few quick actions that I can take against this particular task. The process viewer, I can open up the task itself, reassign it, and then behind the ellipses, you'll find additional actions. Now, just as we had previously, I can always search for a task by name. Depending on who I am in the organization, I still have the role-based views for tasks, and insight into work items that I have started, or simply those that I've participated in. And the next major change here comes under the Statistics tab. Now here, we're showing very much the same data as you saw previously in version 7 and version 6, but again, as with the rest of the platform, you're going to see a complete UI refresh here as well. And then lastly, under My Apps, now, just as you saw earlier, still that concept of frequently used applications, but I can always expand out all of the applications that I have permission to. And you'll notice we've introduced the concept of category-based groupings. Now, this is going to apply across every area of the platform, not only for applications, but also for data entities, as well as pages. Okay, so with that being said, that's going to conclude the Work Center portion of the video. Let's move on to the designer-related changes. Okay, so the first new enhancement that I'd like to speak to really addresses the concept of further enabling citizen development. Now, for those of you who have been on version 7, you're probably already aware of AgilePoint's built-in data designer, data entity. This is a visual drag-and-drop table builder to store data for our applications, and we've made that a whole lot easier to use starting in version 8. So previously, if I wanted to build out an entity, I could point and click to select a category, give my column a name, and configure basic details about the column behavior. Starting in version 8, all I need to do is start with a spreadsheet. So as you can see here, I have a pretty standard Excel sheet. The first row of my sheet, you'll notice that these are all going to become various columns in my data entity. Things like email, customer status, their contact information, etc. Now you'll notice behind the scenes here that I've categorized a few of these cells. Okay, so as you can see here, I have the cell formatting up. Now Excel only gives us a limited number of column types here, but we can pre-configure these to give AgilePoint cues when we import this entity. So while customer status is a generic text field, you'll see here I have date of birth, which is of type date control, numeric fields, time, percentage, fractions, etc. All of these can be used, again, as we mentioned, to give AgilePoint cues for the appropriate column type when I import this spreadsheet. Now beyond the first row here, you'll notice that I'm also going to import data to pre-populate my entity with records. So let's show you how we would do this. I'm going to click on Import Entity here, and you'll notice that we've built on the options available in version 7 of JSON and XML-based imports to now include Excel. Now there are a few guidelines and best practices to follow, so there's a link here that gives me guidance as to those best practices when importing a spreadsheet. So what we'll do here is we're going to select a file, and I'm going to select the sheet that we just walked through. I'm going to import it with data, and then we'll click Import. Now here I'm brought to a preview screen where I can omit certain fields if I don't need them, as well as reclassify the field type prior to import. So I can take advantage of the expanded column types available in AgilePoint, and perhaps reclassify the email field as data type of email. You'll notice down below that based on that configuration for the Excel sheet, AgilePoint understands the best field type to use, but I can always override the suggestions if I'd like. Down below, you'll see that I've selected that I want to import all of the associated records. So now, all I need to do is specify a primary key. You can see here that can either be of type auto increment, if I wanted to add a new record ID as an example to this table, or I can simply select an existing column that may be unique. Okay, so as you can see here, it's given me a display name and a plural name. So my last step here is simply to drop this into a category. Behind the advanced configuration slider, you'll see that I have all of the details pre-configured to import this table structure. Things like a record limit, the ability to import and export both the model as well as the records. And I can instantly enable this within Analytics Center. So for now, let's click Import. And as we can see here, my entity has been created, my entity records have been imported, and we're ready to go. So as a next step, let's take these details and build the application around it and show you the new Add an App experience. Okay, so to further enable citizen developers in the platform, you'll notice that the Add an App dialog has been dramatically simplified. We've removed all references to technical language and implemented a checklist style approach. We still have all of the same language options. I can drop this into a category to make it easier to find as my application count increases. We'll give our process model a name. And we'll give this just a single swim lane. Now here what you're seeing, as opposed to a primary data source in version 7 and version 6, AgilePoint is asking me where I'd like to store the data. All right, so here you're going to see some of the same options from prior versions, but as we alluded to earlier, we can also use an Excel spreadsheet as our primary data source and read from and write to that sheet directly. Now for our purposes, we want to use the entity that we've just created, so I'm going to select Data Entities. We'll give our data source a name, and to make it easier to find, let's filter based on custom entities only. So let's scroll down and find our entity. Optionally here, we can exclude fields if we don't need them. And of course, in the event of any child tables, we can easily bring those along as a part of our application. Okay, so as you're seeing here, next we have a checklist for common application artifacts. This enables me to go through one by one common application elements and make sure that I have everything that I need to build my app. Okay, who will be using the application? You can specify this up front or always address it after the fact, up to you. And based on those inputs, AgilePoint is going to start configuring my application accordingly. And the first step here is going to be within the Process Designer. Okay, so now that we're in the Process Designer, let's take a look at some of the UI level changes that we've made. So as you can see here, all of the integrations have new icons, making them easy to find. But I will also point out that we've added a number of new integrations. So the first of which is the Microsoft Dataverse. As you can see here, CRUD operations as well as query existing records. Ethereum blockchain to deploy, execute, query a smart contract, and read the event logs. Jira activities. Power Automate, the ability to trigger a flow. And then of course, ServiceNow. Okay, so with that being said, let's start adding our first activity here. So I'm going to add in a start task. We're going to start from scratch, but as you know, we can always reuse elements even in entirely unrelated applications. And this is going to drop me into the Forms Designer. Now, if you recall, the major enhancements to the Forms Designer, for one, right, a complete UI refresh of all of the controls, as well as improved control performance across the board. So if I start dragging and dropping a few of the fields here, we'll start to see that new Forms theme taking shape. So now I can reduce my reliance on custom CSS, right? Because as you're seeing, directly out of the box, a very nice, crisp look and feel. So with that being said, let's jump into the final segment for today's video, and that is the Analytics module. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the Analytics module truly represents a huge leap forward, and in fact, this area of reporting and dashboarding was an area of consistent customer feedback over the years. So we'll get into a few samples in just a moment, but before then, you'll notice first that we've greatly expanded the out-of-the-box canned reports, and you'll find here various categories. Things like analytics and operational intelligence, business activity monitoring, and then of course the ability to create your own custom reports. Now, as you'll see in the next few examples here, we've expanded upon the dashboarding capabilities to give you complete control over how your business data is visualized. You'll see here I have a report. I can start at sort of an executive dashboard level. In this case here, drill into a region, Australia, drill into an individual sales rep's performance for a given year, and then of course see all of the details for the various sales engagements. So in theory, we could start from an executive dashboard and drill all the way down to the details of an individual process instance. You'll see here greatly improved dashboarding capabilities, much more control over the layout of these composite dashboards. And for example, at the top, I can subscribe to this report and receive it via email on a specific schedule, have it dropped into a particular file location, print, email, and export the report into a variety of formats, and then of course editing and save options. Now this concludes the content for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.